Mira Voss had learned a long time ago that the safest place at any gathering was the wall. Nobody expected anything from a girl standing against a wall. Nobody looked at her twice. And that was exactly how she liked it. She was 19 years old, and she had been coming to these gatherings since she was 12. Every year, the biggest packs in the region met in one grand hall to trade news, arrange marriages, and remind everyone exactly where they stood. Alphas stood near the front, close to the dais. Betas mixed freely through the middle of the room. Omegas, like Mira, stayed near the walls, quiet and unnoticed, waiting for the night to end. She had heard the word worthless so many times that it no longer hurt the way it used to. It was just a fact of her life, like the color of her eyes, or the sound of her own name. The Alpha families said it about her openly, without any shame, because nobody expected an Omega to defend herself. Mira had stopped trying to defend herself years ago. It was easier to count the floor tiles instead. 43 tiles between the front doors and the dais. She had counted them every single year. Tonight, the hall was more crowded than usual. Long tables stretched along both walls, covered in white cloth and silver trays of food nobody seemed to be eating. Candles glowed from tall iron stands, and the smell of cedar smoke drifted through the air, mixing with expensive perfume and the quiet murmur of 100 different conversations. Somewhere near the dais, a group of alpha men laughed loudly about a hunting trip. Near the food table, a cluster of beta women whispered about a wedding that hadn't been announced yet. Mira's cousin, Delia, found her exactly where she always stood, half hidden behind a stone pillar. "Did you hear?" Delia asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "The king is coming tonight." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Which king?" "King Rhys Adair. The Alpha King himself. He never comes to these regional gatherings. He always sends someone else in his place." Delia leaned in closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a great secret. "Everyone says he's finally choosing a mate. Can you imagine? People have been trying to get his attention for years, and he's ignored every single one of them." "That sounds like his problem, not mine," Mira said. Delia rolled her eyes. "You could at least pretend to care. This is the most exciting thing that's happened at a gathering in years." Mira didn't answer. She looked instead at the far end of the hall, where the dais stood empty, waiting for whatever ceremony was about to unfold. She had no interest in kings or mates or ceremonies. She had learned long ago that these things were not meant for girls like her. They were meant for girls like Petra Calloway, who stood near the front in a shimmering blue dress, laughing brightly at something one of the Alpha Lords had said. An hour passed, the music grew louder, and more people arrived, filling every corner of the hall. Mira grew tired of standing, and found a quiet spot near the back wall, away from the crowd, where she could watch without being watched. She liked this position best. From here, she could see everything happening without anyone paying attention to her. Then, without warning, the entire hall went silent. It happened so suddenly that Mira almost thought she had imagined it. One moment, there was noise and laughter and the clinking of glasses. The next, there was nothing. Even the musicians in the corner stopped playing, their instruments frozen mid-note. Mira looked toward the entrance, along with everyone else in the room, and saw him. King Rhys Adair was taller than she expected, with dark hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in the entire hall in a single glance. He wore simple black clothing, without any of the jewelry or decoration that most Alpha Lords like to display. He didn't need decoration. Something about the way he stood made it clear, without any doubt, that he was the most powerful person in the room. He walked through the crowd slowly, and people stepped aside for him without being asked. Mira watched Petra Calloway straighten her dress and smile in his direction, clearly expecting him to stop beside her. He didn't. He walked straight past the front tables, past the dais, past every Alpha family that had spent years hoping for exactly this moment. He walked toward the back wall. Mira felt a strange pressure building in her chest, like something pressing gently against her ribs from the inside. She told herself it was nerves. She told herself it was nothing. But the feeling grew stronger with every step he took, until she realized, with a strange kind of certainty, that he was walking toward her. She looked down at her hands instead of looking at him. She noticed a loose thread on her sleeve and focused on it, winding it once around her finger, then twice. It was a small, simple thing to focus on, something she understood completely. unlike the impossible sight of a king crossing an entire hall to reach the corner where the Omegas stood. The footsteps stopped in front of her. Mira looked up. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The silence in the hall stretched on, heavy and complete, as if everyone present were holding their breath at the same time. Mira could hear Delia's sharp intake of breath somewhere behind her. She could see, out of the corner of her eye, Petra Calloway's frozen expression near the front of the room. Then King Rhys Adair knelt. He went down on one knee, right there on the hard stone floor, in front of the entire gathering. It wasn't a small gesture. It wasn't something done quietly, in a private room, away from prying eyes. He did it in front of every Alpha family present, in front of 100 years of tradition that said an Omega, like Mira Voss, was worth nothing at all. Mira Voss, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the silent hall, as if the whole room had been built specifically to make sure everyone heard him. My family has been searching for you since before you were born. Mira's mouth went dry. I don't understand. You will. She waited for him to explain further, but he didn't. He simply looked at her, steady and calm, as if he had all the time in the world and no need to rush an explanation that clearly deserved one. I'm an Omega, Mira said slowly, choosing her words with care. Nobody has ever wanted an Omega like me. That's not an opinion. That's just what everyone here has told me my whole life. Something shifted in his expression. It wasn't pity. She would have recognized pity immediately. She had seen enough of it to know its shape well. This was something closer to anger, though it wasn't directed at her. It was directed at the room, at the family names surrounding them, at years of lies she had been told, and had, eventually, come to believe. That is what they told you, he said, because the truth was inconvenient for them. He rose to his feet slowly, still watching her closely. There is a story behind your birth that your family never told you, a promise made between two bloodlines, generations ago, that your own relatives chose to hide rather than honor. I am not going to explain everything here, in front of an audience that has spent your whole life underestimating you, but I want you to know this much. You were never worthless. You were simply waiting. Mira felt her chest tighten, though this time it wasn't fear. It was something closer to disbelief, mixed with a strange, cautious hope she didn't fully trust yet. Why now? She asked. Why come all this way, to this gathering, after everyone has ignored me for years? Because I only recently learned where to look, he said simply. And once I learned, I was not going to wait a single day longer. Around them, the silence in the hall had started to break apart into whispers. Mira could hear voices rising near the front of the room, confused and shocked, though she didn't look away from the king long enough to see any faces. She didn't need to. She could imagine the expressions well enough on her own. This isn't a conversation I want to finish here, King Rhys said quietly, leaning slightly closer so that his words were meant only for her. But I want to be clear about one thing before we go anywhere else. I am not leaving this hall without you. Mira looked past him, toward the crowd that had spent 19 years calling her worthless without a single moment of doubt. She saw Petra Calloway's frozen smile. She saw the Alpha Lords near the dais, whispering urgently to one another. She saw her own family, standing near the back, looking as shocked as everyone else in the room. She thought about the years of standing against walls, the years of counting floor tiles, because it was easier than looking at people who saw right through her like she wasn't there at all. She thought about every single insult she had swallowed quietly, every single time she had been told, directly or indirectly, that she didn't matter. Something inside her, something that had been quiet and small for a very long time, suddenly felt steady instead, not loud, not dramatic. Just steady, the way a hand feels when it finally stops shaking. She unwound the thread from her finger. Then don't, she said. And instead of waiting for him to lead her out of the hall, the way tradition would have expected, Mira turned and walked toward the doors herself. For the first time in her entire life, it was the king who followed her, not the other way around. Behind them, the hall of the gathering, once so silent it seemed frozen in time, broke apart into noise and confusion. Voices rose all at once, questions overlapping questions, nobody quite sure what they had just witnessed. Delia stood frozen near the pillar, one hand pressed to her mouth. Petra Calloway's smile had completely disappeared. Outside the hall, the night air was cool and quiet, a welcome relief after the crowded heat of the gathering. Mira stopped near the entrance steps and turned to face the king properly, for the first time since he had knelt before her. "You still haven't explained anything," she said. "No," he agreed, "but I will, starting tonight. Everything you were never told, everything your family kept hidden, all of it. And if I don't like what I hear, then you'll tell me, and I'll listen." He said it simply, without any hesitation, as though the idea of her having a voice in the matter was the most natural thing in the world. "You've spent your whole life being told what you are by people who never bothered to ask you. I'm not interested in repeating their mistake." Mira studied him for a long moment, searching his face for some sign of deception, some hint that this was a trick or a mistake that would be corrected once someone realized who she really was. She found nothing but steady, patient honesty. For 19 years, she had believed she understood exactly where she stood in the world. Tonight, in the space of a few short minutes, that entire understanding had been turned upside down. She did not yet know what her life would look like from this point forward. She did not know what truths waited for her, or what it would mean to be someone other than the girl everyone had dismissed without a second thought. But as she walked beside the king, away from the hall of the gathering and everything it represented, Mira Voss felt something she had never truly felt before in her entire life. She felt seen, and for the first time, that feeling didn't scare her at all.